The question is that this bill be now read a second time. Call the member for Calare.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise to speak on the private health insurance legislation amendment, Bill 2013. And Deputy Speaker, this bill gives effect to changes to private health insurance that were announced in mid-year Economic and Fiscal Outlook 2012-13, and furthermore, Deputy Speaker, a bill removing the rebate from lifetime health cover loadings was introduced in the last sitting week of last year, but has not been brought on for debate. And this current bill was only introduced in the last sitting week. It is being rushed through the Parliament without giving the opposition time to consider it properly through normal processes. But we know that this is partly to cover, Deputy Speaker, quite obviously for their woeful, that's being polite, totally inept economic management, which has seen them turn a 70 billion in assets and a 20 billion surplus into rolling deficits and debt, now pushing through the government's own $300 billion debt ceiling. And I hate to repeat myself, but there's nothing else you can do in this situation, Deputy Speaker. Due to Labor's economic incompetence, there is now a budget emergency which they are trying to plug with a raid on private insurance. The effect of the current bill is that the government's contribution to an individual's private health insurance rebate would be indexed annually by the lesser of the Consumer Price Index, CPI, or the actual increase in the premium charged by insurers. And this will not only force up the cost of private health insurance further, it will add significantly to the complexity of the product and will be administratively difficult for any future government to implement. Deputy Speaker, the effect of this change won't be felt by individuals or the health system for some time, as it won't commence until April 2014. However, the effect of the government's cut from means testing changes have yet to be felt, with over $1.2 billion in premium prepayments in June 2012 as people sought to avoid the financial consequences for one financial year or more. The lifetime health cover changes haven't passed the Parliament and will also have a detrimental effect on coverage if passed. The cumulative effect of these measures is likely to have a significant impact on private health insurance coverage and increased demand for public hospital services in the years ahead, which will require a response from any future government. It is common sense, Deputy Speaker, that it's just like public schooling and private schooling. The private schooling, like private health, take out the cost to government of looking after education and health. The more you hurt the private, the more you force people to depend upon the public, the greater the cost to the taxpayer, the less inefficient the service, and it is just a rolling stone. However, we all know that the Labor Party hates private health, hates private education, and will do anything it can to see the back end of both. Whether it affects the nation's prosperity, whether it affects the efficiency of the system, does not seem to be something that affects them. The lifetime health cover charges haven't passed the Parliament, and as I said, will also have a detrimental effect on coverage if passed. This bill adds immense complexity to the private health insurance system. It is the third savings measure to private health insurance introduced by the Labor government, which will again force up the cost of premium. The Prime Minister and other members over many years, Deputy Speaker, have ruled out any changes to the private health rebates. In a letter to the then Australian Health Association in November 2007, the member for Griffith said, "Both my Shadow Minister for Health, Nicola Roxon, and I have made it clear on many occasions this year that Federal Labor is committed to retaining the the existing private health insurance rebates, including the 30% general rebate and the 35% and 40% rebates for older Australians. Deputy Speaker, through means testing changes and announcements since, Labor has repeatedly broken its promise on private health insurance. I spoke about the devastating effect the government's change to means testing would have on my electorate of Calare in 2012, and here I am again speaking on the government's continued meddling with private health. We all value our health, those in the bush especially, as we do not have the same access to health care as our city counterparts. We have to look after ourselves because should we get sick, there are a number of hurdles to overcome, and that is even before we get to the hospital. Deputy Speaker, when I was president of a rural representative organisation, New South Wales Farmers, we made the decision we had to go after health, because what was the point of having a successful farm or a successful situation in regional Australia if your health wasn't good? And Deputy Speaker, there are so many instances right through from 2005 until right up to 2009 when this government, or when it was in opposition, repeatedly made pledges they would not do the sort of thing we are faced with today. But the daddy of them all is one that the current Prime Minister made in a letter to the editor in the Weekend Australian, the 15th October 2005, when she'd given our now leader of the opposition a big serve about changing his mind on something, but totally claims by the minister that she wanted to knock off the private health insurance rebate. She said, "The truth is that I never had a secret plan to scrap the private health insurance rebate." And she's having a go at her previous leader, Mr Latham, here, and she says, "For all Australians who wanted to have private health insurance, a private health insurance rebate would have remained under a Labor government. I gave an ironclad guarantee of that during the election. The difference between Tony Rock, solid ironclad Abbott and me is that when I make an ironclad commitment, I actually intend on keeping it." Well, given that we all remember the no carbon tax on a government I lead, possibly we should not be surprised, Deputy Speaker, we should not be surprised that once again her rock-solid ironclad guarantee of the current Prime Minister is worthless, and she is doing her level best to destroy private insurance.
The debate is interrupted in accordance with Standing Order 34.